The nurse had a heart of ice, but a child's faith brought her to tears. Have you ever wondered what the true force behind love is? Not the love from fairy tales, but the kind that finds us in the darkness, that asks us to believe when there are no reasons left. This is the story of Eleanor, a woman who wore an angel's white uniform, but had forgotten how to fly. A pediatric nurse whose heart, tired of seeing so much pain, had closed itself off to the most powerful feeling in the universe. It is a journey about a dormant heart and the unwavering faith of a child, who proved that to love, first, one must believe. What happens when a soul that has lost all faith is confronted by an act of love that defies logic itself? If you believe that love can work miracles, subscribe now, because the story of Eleanor and her little patient will reaffirm your faith in humanity. Eleanor was the best nurse on that hospital floor. The most competent, the most efficient. Her movements were precise. Her administration of medicine, flawless. The children respected her, but they felt her distance. There was an invisible barrier, a wall of professionalism she had built to protect herself from heartbreak. For Eleanor, faith was a statistic, and love, a luxury she could no longer afford. In her world, hope was a flame she had seen extinguished far too often to still believe in its light. And then, Grace arrived. Grace was a 7-year-old girl with eyes that seemed to hold all the stars in the sky, but with a body as fragile as an autumn leaf. Her condition was delicate, and the prognosis, uncertain. But while the doctors read charts and her parents cried in silence, Grace had an unshakable certainty. She would look at Eleanor and see not just a nurse. She saw her guardian angel. "It's you," she would whisper in her weak voice. "You're the one who's going to make me fly again." Eleanor heard this with a pang of pain. It was the blind faith of childhood, a fantasy that the harsh reality of this place would soon disprove. She cared for Grace with her usual efficiency, but her heart remained locked away. Days turned into weeks, and Grace's little light began to flicker, to fade. The doctors were pessimistic. Her parents' faith was wavering. And Eleanor, deep down, prepared herself for the inevitable, for yet another flame to go out. In the face of science and despair, can a child's faith truly change destiny? Leave a like if you believe it can, and keep watching to see the moment that changed everything. One rainy afternoon, when the floor was quieter and sadder than ever, Grace called for Eleanor. Her fragile little hands were holding something. It was a small star, made from the golden paper strips of a candy box. "This is for you, Angel," Grace said with immense effort. "It's a faith amulet, to help you believe stronger. For both of us." As she received that little star in her hands, something inside Eleanor broke. It wasn't a gift. It was a rescue. This child, who had every reason to have lost her faith, was offering hers to her. In that instant, Eleanor saw herself through Grace's eyes, and what she saw terrified her. An empty woman with broken wings, incapable of offering the love that this little girl so desperately believed she possessed. The professionalism, the distance, it wasn't protection. It was a prison. And the tears, which she hadn't shed in years, began to roll down her face. From that day on, a new nurse walked into Grace's room. The name was the same, but the soul was different. Eleanor didn't just administer medicine. She held Grace's hand and prayed with her. She didn't just check vital signs. She told stories, sang lullabies, and whispered words of hope. She took the faith borrowed from that child and watered it with all the love that still existed, buried in her heart. She decided, as an act of pure faith, to believe in Grace. And then, the inexplicable happened. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the numbers on the monitors began to improve. The color returned to Grace's face. A genuine smile replaced the expression of pain. Eleanor's love, now real and overflowing, seemed to be achieving what medicine had hesitated to promise. On the morning of a day celebrating children, the sun flooded the room. Grace, much stronger, was sitting up in bed, waiting to be discharged. When Eleanor walked in, the little girl opened her arms. In the most sincere hug Eleanor had ever received, Grace whispered in her ear, "I knew your faith was the strongest of all, my angel." Eleanor held her tight, her face wet with happy tears, and felt her own wings, long broken, begin to heal. Their journey teaches us the most profound lesson about the human heart, perfectly captured by the philosopher Eric Fromm. Love is an act of faith, and whoever is of little faith is also of little love. Eleanor thought her heart was empty because the world was cruel. But the truth, which a small child taught her, was that her heart was empty because her faith had died. By accepting Grace's gift, She didn't just accept a paper star. She accepted faith, and in doing so, she opened the floodgates to love. And it was this love, born from an act of faith, that worked the true miracle. In honor of all the children in the world, may their pure and unwavering faith always remind us how to love. Did this story touch your heart? Did it renew your hope? Comment below, leave a like to celebrate the power of faith and love, and share this message to inspire more people. Subscribe now, and if you can, consider making a donation to help us continue creating stories that touch the soul. Thank you for watching and for believing with us. Until the next story. He lost his daughter and forgot how to live. But a little boy's gift led him back to heaven. Do you remember that magic that only exists in childhood? That time when the greatest treasure was a box of colored pencils and the grandest adventure took place in your own backyard? Now, imagine what happens when a man, who dedicated his life to creating that magic for children, loses his own light. This is the story of Elias, a toy maker whose heart was shattered into so many pieces that he even forgot the sound of laughter. It is a journey into the deep darkness of grief and about how the smallest of lights, from the soul of a child, can show us the way back home. What happens when a heart that has given up on everything is touched by the purest form of love that exists? If you believe that love is the brightest light in the darkness, subscribe now, because you need to witness this journey of healing and hope. On a quiet street, there was a small shop called Lily's Dream. It was Elias's toy workshop. Inside, there was no plastic, no flashing lights, no electronic noises. There was the smell of wood, of fresh paint, and of love. Elias was a master. His hands, calloused and gentle, turned pieces of wood into rocking horses that seemed to gallop and into dolls that seemed to have souls. The shop was named after his daughter, Lily, a little girl with bright eyes who was the inspiration for every creation, the first to test every toy. But one day, Lily's laughter fell silent forever, taken by a cruel illness. And with her, the soul of the shop and of Elias were gone too. He closed the doors, and the window display, once a universe of color, became a dusty mirror reflecting a father's pain. Elias stopped creating. He stopped living. Years passed and the shop remained closed, a wound on the neighborhood's landscape. Elias lived like a ghost in his own house, and grief was his only companion. But the magic of childhood is stubborn. A little boy named Noah, about 6 years old, moved into the house across the street. Every day, he would stop in front of the dusty shop, his nose pressed against the glass, trying to see the treasures hidden in the gloom. He didn't see abandonment. He saw an enchanted world, fast asleep. One day, on the eve of a local children's festival, Noah worked up his courage. He saw Elias step outside to get the mail, a shadow of a man, and ran up to him. With his little hands behind his back, he just looked up, with those pure eyes that only a child has, and said nothing. Noah's silence, full of innocent curiosity, was louder than any word Elias had ever heard. But Elias's heart was a fortress of stone. He just ignored him and went back inside. In the silence of a broken heart, can the voice of a child be heard? Leave a like if you're rooting for a miracle, and keep watching to see if the darkness can finally give way to light. The next morning, the day of the festival, Elias woke up with the same familiar emptiness. But upon opening his door, he found a small package on the ground. It was a drawing, made with all the care that Noah's childish strokes would allow. It was a portrait of Elias, but he wasn't sad. In the drawing, he was smiling and handing a wooden rocking horse to a little girl with angel wings, who was flying towards the sun. Beside it, in shaky lettering, it read, "For the man who makes angels smile." In that instant, the stone fortress inside Elias crumbled. The tears he had held back for years came like a flood, washing away all the dust, all the pain, all the bitterness. That small piece of paper, that simple gift from a child who barely knew him, was an act of love so pure, so unconditional, that he felt as if it were the hand of God itself touching his shoulder. He didn't just see a drawing. He saw permission to miss his daughter not with pain, but with love. That was the day Elias came back to life. He didn't just open the shop. He transformed it. He took off all the price tags, and on the door, he put up a new sign, "Lily's Dad's Dream Workshop. Children, come in and create." The shop became a free space where the neighborhood kids could learn to create their own toys. And there, at the center of it all, was Elias, his apron smudged with paint, his eyes shining again, teaching Noah how to sand the wings of a wooden angel. Amidst the sounds of laughter and creativity, he felt Lily's presence, not as a painful absence, but as a warm joy, a sun that warmed him from the inside. He finally understood. That is why his journey perfectly embodies the immortal words of Michelangelo. Love is the swift wing that God gave to the soul to fly to heaven. Elias had been trapped in the hell of his own grief. His soul was heavy, unable to move. But the pure, selfless love of a child, Noah, was the swift wing his soul needed. That love didn't make him forget his pain, but it taught him how to fly above it. It reconnected him not only with his passion, but with the spirit of his own daughter, allowing his heart to soar once more. In this tribute to all children, may they always remind us that love is our true nature and our path to heaven. Did this story touch your heart? What did you feel? Comment below, leave a like to celebrate innocence and love, and share this message so it can warm other hearts. Subscribe now, and if you can, consider making a donation to help us continue creating stories that remind us of our humanity. Thank you for watching and for allowing this story to reach you. Until next time. He had everything, but his soul was dying. The rescue in the attic. Have you ever felt like a complete stranger in your own life? Imagine waking up every day in a perfect house, driving a luxury car, and being applauded for your career. But when you look in the mirror, you don't recognize the person you see. This is the story of Arthur, a man who conquered the world, but in the process, lost himself. It's a journey about the silence that precedes a storm in the soul, and about how, sometimes, you have to fall apart to rebuild yourself. What happens when your own heart sends you one last distress call? Prepare yourself, because what Arthur found in the most forgotten place in his house might be what you need to find too. If you've ever felt disconnected from yourself, subscribe now, because this journey will speak directly to your soul. Arthur was a work of modern architectural art, just like the houses he designed. His life was a facade of glass and polished concrete. Flawless, admired, but cold to the touch. Success was his constant companion, but joy was merely a rare and formal visitor. At business dinners, his smiles were well-executed projects, and his hugs for his wife Helena had the precision of a blueprint but lacked warmth, lacked life. He was a king in a castle of ice, and the weight of his own crown was slowly crushing him, freezing the passion that once kept him warm. Years ago, that warmth came from the smell of wood, the dust of sawdust on his hands, the magic of transforming a lifeless block into a sculpture full of curves and feelings. That passion, however, was buried alive under the foundations of the successful man he became. The first crack in his perfect castle wasn't an earthquake, but a heartbreaking whisper. One evening, Helena watched him from across the room, her eyes welling up with a sorrow she could no longer hide. With a trembling voice she said, "I miss you, Arthur. Not the brilliant architect the world applauds. I miss my Arthur. The one who laughed with his whole body, who had splinters in his fingers and a universe in his eyes. Where is he?" Her words were a mirror that reflected an image he could no longer ignore. A hollow man, a ghost inhabiting a successful life. The pain of that truth was so overwhelming it left him breathless. That was his lowest point, the acknowledgement of his emotional bankruptcy. Is there still a way back when we've strayed so far from ourselves? Leave a like if you believe in the power of transformation and keep watching, because what happens next is proof that hope can be found in the darkest of places. That very night, as if the heavens were crying for him, a leak in the roof forced him into the attic, a sanctuary of dust and memories he had avoided like a tomb. And that's exactly what it was. The tomb of his dreams. The weak beam of his flashlight revealed what was left of the real Arthur. His carving tools, covered by a sheet like a shroud, and an unfinished block of oak, waiting for 15 years for hands that never returned. As he touched the cold wood, an electric current shot through his body. It was a reunion. He fell to his knees, not from the weight of the world, but from the weight of missing himself. A silent, convulsive sob shook him, a mourning for all the years he had spent as a stranger to his own heart. There on that dirty floor, he didn't just decide to change. He begged for a second chance. The end of this story isn't about Arthur becoming a famous sculptor. It's something infinitely more beautiful. It's about a man who learned to be whole. Months later, Helena walked into the workshop he had built where his sterile office used to be. The scent of wood filled the air. Arthur had his back to her, working on a sculpture of an embracing couple, the lines flowing with a tenderness he seemed to have relearned how to feel. When he turned around, Helena saw something she hadn't seen in a decade. His eyes were welling up, but not with sadness. They were tears of pure, absolute joy. He looked at her, then at the sculpture and said with a choked voice, "It's us. Finally, it's us." Helena approached, touched the wood warmed by his work, and seeing her husband's face, cried with him. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, for having her Arthur back. Not the architect, but the artist of his own life. That is why his journey shows us, in the most profound way, the power of the quote by Norman Cousins. The tragedy of life is not death but what we let die inside of us while we live. Arthur almost became a victim of this silent tragedy. He was alive, breathing, but he had allowed his essence, his passion, his purest joy, to die in the name of an idea of success the world sold him. His story is proof that it's never too late to go up to the attic of our soul, dust off our forgotten dreams, and with trembling hands, begin to carve the life that brings the sparkle back to our eyes. What did you think of this story? Did it move you? Comment below which part touched you the most. Leave a like so this message of hope can reach more hearts, and share it with someone who needs to find themselves again. Subscribe now, and if you can, consider making a donation to help us continue bringing stories that heal and inspire. Thank you for watching and for being a part of our community. Until the next story. He lost everything. But love at the edge of the abyss changed his life forever. What if the love of your life showed up right when you had nothing left to give? No money, no plans, not even hope. Would you still have the courage to accept that love? And what if the only thing that could save your soul was the very thing you tried to push away? This is the true story of someone who discovered that true love doesn't arrive when everything is perfect. It blooms when everything falls apart. Subscribe now, because this story will touch your heart in ways you never expected. Ethan was just like many other dreamers. A self-taught programmer, he grew up in a humble home with his mother, Grace, a retired teacher whose eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had already weathered many storms. They lived in a tiny apartment on top of a hill, where the sunset kissed the sea every evening. Ethan worked from home and dreamed big. He wanted to launch an app that would help people in debt get back on their feet. He always said, "I don't just want to make money. I want to change lives." Then one ordinary day at a cozy downtown cafe, everything began to shift. A power outage, candlelight, and right across from him, a stranger, Lily, a soft-spoken photographer with eyes full of unspoken stories and a smile that melted silence. Their conversation flowed naturally, as if the universe had scripted their meeting. In the weeks that followed, they became inseparable, holding hands at the market, laughing on the couch, and dreaming about a life they would build together. But life has its tides. An overseas investor who had promised to fund Ethan's app turned out to be a scammer. All of his savings, gone. That same month, Grace suffered a minor stroke, requiring expensive medications and care. Ethan tried to smile through it all. But inside, he was breaking. Bills piled up. Pressure mounted. Sunny days turned gray. Lily's messages went unread. And Ethan disappeared. She deserves someone whole. Not a failure like me, he whispered to himself. He shut himself off. From friends. From dreams. From light. He ate stale bread, slept on the floor next to his mother's bed, and cried silently at night so she wouldn't hear. On Christmas Eve, alone in the dark, he looked out the window and murmured, "What's love worth if it doesn't pay the bills? If I have nothing to give?" He thought of giving up. Completely. But fate had one more chapter to write. Christmas morning. Soft sunlight peeked through the blinds. A gentle knock at the door. He opened it. And there she was. Lily. No makeup. Eyes full of tears. Holding a warm corn cake in her hands. She said nothing. Just walked in. She tidied the couch, took out the trash, made tea, and sat beside him. "You may have lost everything, Ethan, but I haven't lost you." From her coat pocket, she pulled out a crumpled piece of paper with a handwritten quote. "Love is like a delicate flower, but you must have the courage to pick it at the edge of a cliff. Stendhal." And she whispered, "I'm here, willing to pick you, even if the world falls apart." In that moment, everything changed. The tears came, the walls crumbled, and Ethan was reborn. In the months that followed, Lily stayed, not to fix his problems, but to show him that real love doesn't demand perfection. It asks only for presence. Ethan started over. Slowly. He cared for his mother with tenderness, wrote code through sleepless nights, and with Lily by his side, he relaunched his app, now with a deeper mission: to help people rebuild their emotional and financial lives. Today, he's a speaker. He founded a non-profit, and the first screen of his app displays the quote that saved him: "Love is like a delicate flower." He learned that true love doesn't come to rescue us. It comes to remind us who we are when we've forgotten. As Stendhal once said, "To love is for the brave." And Lily was the courage Ethan needed most. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. Love is still worth it. Like the video, share it with someone who needs this today, and subscribe for more stories like this. If you can, support this project through a donation at the link below. Because sometimes, a story like this can save a life. Their perfect Christmas felt empty, but the key to happiness was hidden in an old box. Have you ever felt the gentle pressure of creating a perfect Christmas? The perfect tree, the perfect meal, the perfect cozy feeling. But what if, behind all that perfection, your heart felt quiet and distant? This is the story of Amelia and Liam, a couple who had built a picture-perfect life, but on Christmas Eve, found themselves locked on the outside of their own happiness. It is a tender journey about the gates that success cannot open, and about the one gentle key that truly matters. What happens when love is tested on the most magical night of the year? If you believe the real gift of Christmas cannot be bought, subscribe now, because this story will gently warm your soul. Amelia and Liam's home looked like a scene from a beautiful film. The Christmas lights twinkled in perfect harmony, the dinner table was set with a quiet elegance, and the scent of cinnamon and pine floated softly through the air. Amelia, a thoughtful architect, had orchestrated every detail. She believed that if she could just set the stage for happiness perfectly, then happiness would have no choice but to arrive. But while she moved with a quiet focus, arranging the last ornament on the tree, Liam was a gentle shadow in the room. A talented writer who had faced a year of quiet disappointments, he felt like an imposter in their beautiful home. The weight of his own perceived failure had built a soft, invisible wall between him and Amelia. He loved her deeply, but he couldn't find his way across the desert of his own sadness to reach her. Christmas Eve arrived, and with it, a tender, almost fragile tension. Every chime of the clock seemed to deepen the silence between them. Finally, unable to bear the quiet ache any longer, Amelia looked at Liam, a soft vulnerability in her eyes. "I did all of this, Liam. I did it for us. Can't you even smile?" The question, meant as a plea, hung in the air between them. Liam looked up, and the gentle pain in his eyes made Amelia's heart ache. "I don't know how, Ames," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I look at all of this, and I just feel like I don't belong here. Not anymore." In that moment, the magic of Christmas seemed to fade. The perfect dinner, the shining tree, it all lost its color. They were together, yet so very much alone, each locked in their own gentle sorrow. With a silence that felt heavier than any word, could their love survive the most magical night of the year? Leave a like if you've ever felt alone even with someone you love, and keep watching to see if a Christmas miracle is possible. Heartbroken, Amelia went to the storage room, ready to put everything away and declare an end to the sad evening. But as she moved a box, she found another one, small and covered in dust. An old shoebox with the word, "Us," written in faded pen. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, nestled in cotton, was the very first Christmas ornament they had ever bought together, 10 years ago, when they lived in a tiny apartment and barely had money for a tree. It was a simple wooden star, a little chipped on the side. Holding it, memories flooded back in a warm, gentle wave. The easy laughter, the dreams whispered in the dark, the certainty that as long as they had each other, they had everything. And then she wept. She wept as she realized she had been trying to open the gates of happiness with the wrong keys. Perfection, appearances, things. The master key had been here all along, forgotten in this old box. She didn't say a word. She just returned to the living room, where Liam was still sitting in the soft darkness. She sat on the floor beside him, took his hand, and gently placed the little wooden star in his palm. "Remember?" she whispered, her voice full of tears. Liam looked at the star, and his whole body trembled. He remembered. He remembered the hopeful young writer he was, and how Amelia's love was the only thing that mattered. The wall inside him dissolved. He pulled her into a hug, the hug of a man who was lost at sea and has finally found shore. "I'm sorry," he sobbed softly into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry I shut you out." She held him tighter. "And I'm sorry. I was so busy decorating our house, I forgot to take care of your heart." That night, the perfect dinner grew cold on the table. The expensive gifts remained untouched. The true Christmas miracle happened right there, on the floor of the living room, in a gentle healing embrace that washed away a year's worth of pain. The next morning, Christmas sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating a new scene. The house was a little messy, but their hearts were full. And at the very top of the perfectly decorated tree, in place of the crystal angel, hung the small, chipped wooden star. Their journey shows us the timeless and beautiful truth that Oliver Wendell Holmes shared with us. Love is the master key that opens the gates of happiness. Amelia and Liam learned in the most heartwarming way that happiness is not a place you can decorate or buy. It is a gate, locked from the inside by our own fears and pains. And no matter how many keys of success, wealth, or perfection you try to use, only one has the gentle power to turn the lock. Love. The love that forgives, that holds you in the dark, and that remembers who you were, so you can find your way back to who you are meant to be. Did this Christmas story warm your heart? What was your favorite moment? Comment below, leave a like to celebrate the true spirit of Christmas, and share this message with someone you love. Subscribe now for more stories that touch the soul, and if you can, consider making a donation so we can continue to open the gates of happiness. Thank you for watching, and a Merry Christmas, filled with the love that is the key to everything. She had only one Christmas Eve left. But his love made the miracle happen. To love is to have a bird perched on your finger. Mario Quintana. This quote is a metaphor for how delicate love is. Loving is like having a bird on your finger. You feel its presence, but know it could fly away at any moment. It's about accepting the risk without trying to hold on. It's about trusting, caring, and being grateful for every second, even knowing it may end. And that's exactly what he did. What if your last Christmas was also the most unforgettable of your life? What if the true Christmas miracle wasn't a cure or a gift, but a love so pure, so delicate, that even when everything seemed lost, it chose to stay? Imagine loving someone knowing they could leave at any moment, and still choosing to stay. No expectations, no control, just love. This isn't just a Christmas story. It's a gift from heaven. But get ready, because what you're about to hear is real, it's powerful, and it will touch your soul. Before we go on, subscribe to the channel right now, because by the end of this story, you'll understand that true love doesn't hold on, it frees. And this story will prove it. In the heart of a small town decorated with glowing lights and snow-covered trees, lived a young man named Lucas, 22, a seller of old poetry books. His life was simple, but his heart was enormous. One ordinary December day, he met Camila, a 21-year-old nurse who cared for terminal patients at the local hospital. They met by chance when Lucas donated books of poems to the children's ward. Camila had eyes that smiled before her lips did. And Lucas, he had a way of hearing silence. They began to see each other often. They'd walk at night through decorated streets, sip hot chocolate, read Mario Quintana together, and talk about dreams. With every touch, every laugh, Lucas felt it. That love was rare. Like a bird perched on his finger. You feel it there. But you can't squeeze it. Or it flies away. On Christmas Eve, Lucas planned a surprise. A dinner just for the two of them in the middle of the lit-up town square, surrounded by candles and holiday music. She appeared in a simple red dress and a tired smile. That night, they danced as if time had stopped. But there was something in Camila's eyes Lucas couldn't quite understand. Something she was hiding. 5 days before Christmas, Camila had received the diagnosis. Leukemia, advanced stage. She had been in treatment for a year, but her body was no longer responding. The doctors were clear. It was a matter of days. She didn't tell him. She didn't want their love to turn into grief. She didn't want to see pity in Lucas's eyes. She just wanted to love. Until the end. On Christmas Eve, between laughter and songs, she collapsed in Lucas's arms. He rushed her to the hospital. And that's when he found out everything. His world fell apart. He asked why she didn't tell him. She simply whispered, "Because loving you is like holding a bird on my finger. I knew one day it would fly away, but I wanted to enjoy every second before that happened." If you're feeling this in your chest right now, it's because love has perched there too. Subscribe now because what happened next is unbelievable. Lucas didn't leave the hospital. Every day, he read poetry at Camila's bedside. He gathered friends, mobilized networks, and secured an emergency transfusion and an experimental drug, even knowing it was risky. The doctor shook his head, but Lucas said, "Love is an invisible miracle. And I believe in it." On New Year's Eve, the entire town gathered outside the hospital. Lights were turned on, music played. At 11:59 p.m., Lucas held Camila's hand and said, "If you go, I'll understand. But if you can stay, just a little longer, I promise I won't hold you tight. I'll just keep loving you." And when the clock struck midnight, Camila opened her eyes. Weak but conscious. Crying. She survived. Was it a miracle? Medicine? Love? Maybe all of it. Maybe it was just the bird deciding to stay a little longer. Today, 3 years later, Lucas and Camila still walk those same decorated streets. She's still in treatment, but she lives. She lives with strength, with gratitude, with poetry. And every Christmas, Lucas remembers. To love is to accept that the other may fly away at any moment. But while they're perched on your finger, you care for them with tenderness, without fear, with faith. To love is to have a bird perched on your finger, not to hold tight, but to be grateful for every second it chose to stay. If this story touched you, comment below. What was the moment that moved you the most? Like the video so this message can reach more hearts. Share it with someone you love. And if you can, consider donating using the link below so more stories like this can inspire lives. Do you have a story of love and resilience that deserves to be told? Share it in the comments. Maybe the next story will be yours. Thank you for being here. Merry Christmas. May your love also know how to fly and return. See you in the next video. He lost his sight on New Year's Eve. What she did to save him will make you cry. Have you ever asked yourself what it truly means to love someone? Is it to love what your eyes can see? The smile, the beauty, the success? And what happens when all of that disappears? Imagine building a perfect life alongside someone and, in the blink of an eye, watching their world plunge into darkness. This is the story of Chloe and Ethan, a couple whose happiness seemed unshakable, until fate tested them in the cruelest way, on the very night that was meant to celebrate a new beginning. It's a journey about the doors that success cannot open, and about the difference between loving with the heart and loving with the soul. If you believe that true love can see in the dark, subscribe now, because this story will touch a profound place in your spirit. Chloe and Ethan were a visual poem. She, a photographer with a vibrant soul, captured the world's beauty through her lens. He, a visionary architect, designed the future in bold, magnificent lines. Their love was a passionate, Mutual admiration. She loved the way he saw the world, turning empty spaces into dreams of concrete and glass. He loved the way she found light in the most unexpected places, making moments eternal with her camera. They loved each other with their hearts, with their skin, with their eyes. They were the picture of happiness, building a brilliant future, one champagne toast at a time, always ready for the next achievement. But destiny, at times, has a tragic way of teaching us what truly matters. An accident. A cold December night. The lights of an ambulance were the last thing Ethan ever saw. He survived, but his sight was gone forever. The architect who lived by seeing the future now lived in a perpetual darkness. The confident, brilliant man Chloe had so admired gave way to a shadow of bitterness and despair. He refused to get out of bed, to speak, to be touched. The darkness outside was a mirror of the one growing inside him. Chloe tried with all her love to be his light. But he pushed her away. "What do you see in me now, Chloe?" he snarled one day, his voice laced with venom. "A cripple? A burden? The man you loved doesn't exist anymore." Her heart shattered. Their love, once a celebration, was now a silent, painful struggle. New Year's Eve was approaching, and their home, once a sanctuary of dreams, had become a prison of silence and sadness. In the midst of so much pain, can a love survive when the very image that defined it has been destroyed? Leave a like if you believe in the strength of the human spirit, and keep watching to see what happened at the turn of the year. On New Year's Eve, Chloe sat alone in the living room, tears streaming down her face. The world outside was preparing to celebrate, but her world was in ruins. She was ready to give up. But then, a memory, a phrase they once read together, echoed in her mind. She realized, with a clarity that cut through her soul, that she was trying to love the ghost of the man Ethan had been. Her love was tied to what her eyes saw, to what her heart missed. But what about the spirit? Ethan's spirit, the fighter, the creator, the man she admired for his inner strength. He was still there, buried beneath the pain. And in that instant, she knew what she had to do. It wasn't about making him see again. It was about teaching him to see in a different way. She found him in the dark bedroom. Without a word, she took his hand and guided him to his old architecture studio. The air still smelled of paper and projects. She sat him down in front of a table and placed a large block of clay into his trembling hands. Ethan pulled back. "What are you doing?" "I can't." Chloe knelt in front of him, took his hands, and placed them back on the clay. With a choked but steady voice, she whispered, "You taught me how to see the world. Now, teach me how to see with my hands. Sculpt what you feel. I will be your eyes." He began to cry, the cry of a man who finally feels understood. And his hands, guided by muscle memory and a new kind of vision, began to move. He sculpted the pain, the anger, the longing, and as he sculpted, Chloe described the world to him. The color of the night, the sparkle of distant lights, the tear of gratitude running down her own face. At midnight, as fireworks exploded outside, they didn't toast. They created. Together. In the deepest darkness, they found a new light. Months later, in an art gallery, a crowd was moved to tears. On one side, Chloe's photographs, full of light. On the other, Ethan's sculptures, raw, powerful, made by hands that could not see, but could feel everything. Ethan stood beside one of his works, a human figure rising up. Chloe came close and whispered in his ear, "People are crying, my love. They say they've never seen anything so full of hope." He couldn't see the tears in her eyes, but he could feel them in the vibration of her voice. He turned his face toward her, and for the first time since the accident, a genuine peaceful smile illuminated his face. That is why their journey reveals the sublime truth from the poet Théophile Gautier. To love is to admire with the heart. To admire is to love with the spirit. Chloe and Ethan's initial love was an admiration of the heart, based on what they saw in each other. But when sight was lost, that love was tested and nearly died. It was only when Chloe chose to admire Ethan's resilient spirit, and he in turn admired the strength of her spirit, that true love was born. A love that does not need to see in order to feel. A love that blossoms in the darkness and becomes its own light. Did this New Year's story touch your soul? What did you feel? Comment below, leave a like to celebrate the love that overcomes all barriers, and share this message to inspire the world. Subscribe now for more stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. And if you can, consider making a donation so we can continue creating. Thank you for watching. May this new year bring you a love that teaches you to see with your soul. Wish Happy New Year! She heard the last song before midnight, and was never the same again. On the last day of the year, he promised her eternal love. But fate had other plans. Have you ever heard a song that felt like it was written for your soul? Have you ever loved someone so deeply that, even in the silence, your heart played a melody? And what if I told you that true love doesn't begin with kisses, promises, or candlelit dinners, but with the purest friendship, the kind that dances with you even when everything around you is falling apart? Imagine living a story where love is like a song. One that starts softly, grows over time, but can be interrupted by a heart-rending silence. And what if that song's only stage was New Year's Eve? The quote that inspired this story is from Joseph Campbell. Love is a friendship set to music. And it was this truth that shaped every second of the story of Clara and Leo. Two hearts, two souls, and one song that united them, even when the world insisted on pulling them apart. Clara was a nurse. Leo, a street musician. She cared for wounded bodies. He healed bruised souls. They met by chance, on a rainy December, when Clara left the hospital late and heard Leo playing beside a forgotten Christmas tree. She stopped. He was singing something she didn't know, but it felt as if it had been written just for her. In his eyes, she saw rest. In her eyes, he saw shelter. From that day on, they met every night. Leo said their love didn't need grand gestures. You are the lyrics. I am the melody. Together, we are the song, he would whisper. The days, the months, the seasons passed. But time is treacherous. And at the end of that year, Clara received the news that would break the heart of anyone who has ever truly loved. An advanced brain tumor. Inoperable. 6 months to live, if she was lucky. But she didn't tell Leo. She didn't want to turn their melody into a lament. She wanted their last song to be a joyful one. She spent the month of December smiling, pretending everything was fine. Every laugh was an effort. Every hug, a silent plea for forgiveness. On the last day of the year, she organized something special. A simple dinner, candles, forced laughter, and, at midnight, a request. Promise me something, Leo. If one day I disappear, keep playing. Even if the audience leaves. Even if the rain falls. Even if the world goes silent. Play. Because as long as you are playing, I will still exist somewhere. Leo found it strange, but he smiled. He held her tight. And on that turn of the year, he played a new song. The one he had never shown anyone. The song that was born from his soul. Because it was made with love. They danced, even without a sound. Because their love no longer needed a single note. The next day, Clara was gone. No note left behind. No goodbye. Just an envelope, with medical records and the sentence, I love you so much that I'd rather you remember me smiling, dancing, and not dying. Leo fell apart. He stopped singing. He threw away his guitar. He tried to forget. But every year, on that same night, when the fireworks take over the sky, he hears that melody in his head. And he feels her touch. He started playing again. Not to win applause, but so that Clara's soul could fly with every chord. Today, he plays in a small square. Alone, but never empty. Because as long as the music exists, their love remains alive. That is why we say that love is a friendship set to music. Because it is in the simplicity of a gaze, in the silence of an embrace, in the song that only two hearts can understand, that it is born. It grows. And even after the end, it continues to echo. If you have ever loved like this, or wish to, close your eyes now. Feel that melody you don't hear with your ears, but with your soul. Because somewhere, someone else is also listening, and waiting for your dance to begin. And if you cried, if you felt it, if it touched you, share the story. Subscribe. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We turn phrases into life. And stories into healing. What was your favorite moment? Comment below. Leave a like to celebrate a true new year. and share this message with someone you love. Subscribe now for more stories that touch the soul, and if you can, consider making a donation so we can continue to open up hopes for happiness and love. Happy New Year! May you find a love that makes you dance, even in the silence. Thank you for allowing this story to touch your heart. May this new journey remind you that true love doesn't end with a goodbye. It begins with a chord and becomes eternal with every beat of the soul. Until the next video. Happy New Year!